Eala looks back at forever moment training with Rafael Nadal. Manila, Philippines. Eala savored her training session with tennis great Rafa Nadal last November in Mallorca, Spain. Eala had her defining moments in 2025, and one of the most unforgettable highlights of her year was hitting the court with her mentor and 22-time Grand Slam winner Nadal. The Rafa Nadal Academy, where Eala trained as a kid and graduated, shared a video of the 20-year-old Filipino talking about her rare training with Nadal, who last saw action in the Davis Cup quarterfinals in 2024. It was so special for me. Obviously, training with Rafa is something that people and young kids can only dream about, so it was such a pleasure to share the court with him, Eala said. Eala even got tips from the legend after the precious moment that she could apply in her future tournaments. He gave me some tips on my forehand and a few other small advice, Eala said. This was Eala's year after her Miami Open dream run led to Grand Slam debuts, including a first win in the US Open, a first Women's Tennis Association title, a career-high ranking of world number 50, and a historic 33rd Southeast Asian Games gold in women's singles. But sharing the court with Nadal was a moment she will never forget for the rest of her life. This is the first time I've ever hit with him in my life, and it's just a memory that will last forever, she said. Eala opens her 2026 season in a WTA 250 event in Auckland, New Zealand, slated January 5th to 11th before she heads to the Australian Open. The morning light in Manacor has a particular way of landing on clay. It doesn't rush. It drapes itself over the court like a promise kept, slow, patient, persistent. Eala remembers that light. Years later, she still does. She remembers the smell of the red earth after it's been watered, the hush before the first ball is struck, and the echo of footsteps that seem to belong to history as much as to the present. This was the day that would live with her. Not because it was loud or dramatic, not because a trophy waited at the end. It was forever because of how quietly it entered her life and how stubbornly it refused to leave. She was young enough to still feel wonder without apology, but old enough to understand that some rooms carry weight. The Rafael Nadal Academy did. It held the ghosts of matches played under burning suns, of comebacks stitched together by willpower, of rituals and routines refined until they became art. And on that day, the man whose name crowned the academy walked onto the court as if it were simply another morning. Rafael Nadal didn't arrive with thunder. He arrived with purpose. Alex watched him the way a student watches a teacher who doesn't know yet that the lesson will be unforgettable. His movements were efficient, almost economical. No wasted steps. No wasted gestures. It struck her that greatness, up close, wasn't flashy. It was precise. They warmed up. The ball traveled between them, and in that space, net to baseline, heartbeat to heartbeat, Alex felt the rare alignment of dream and reality. This wasn't a poster on a bedroom wall or a highlight reel paused mid-roar. This was the ball leaving her strings and arriving at his. This was feedback, instant and honest. This was work. Nadal didn't speak much at first. He didn't need to. His presence was instruction enough. When he did talk, it was with the gentle firmness of someone who understands that discipline and kindness are not opposites. He spoke about footwork as if it were language. He spoke about margins, how winning lives there, in the extra step, the extra second of patience. He spoke about respect for the court, for the opponent, for the game. Alex listened. She always had. Listening was one of her strengths, an underrated skill in a sport that rewards volume and bravado. She absorbed his words the way clay absorbs water. Slowly, deeply, completely. They rallied. And then they rallied again. Each ball was a question. Each return was an answer. Nadal's shots came heavy, arcing with intention, landing deep and demanding. Alex chased them not with fear, but with curiosity. How far could she stretch? How clean could she strike? How long could she stay present? At one point, Nadal paused the drill. He walked closer to the baseline, traced a small half moon with the toe of his shoe, and gestured for her to adjust her position. "Here," he said. Not louder than necessary. "Trust this." Trust. The word landed heavier than the ball. She tried again. The difference was immediate. The shot felt fuller, more balanced. It wasn't just technique, it was belief placed correctly, like a foot behind the line or a mind behind the moment. Nadal nodded once. It was a small gesture, but it felt like applause. That nod followed her for years. Later, when matches tightened and doubt crept in, Alex would remember it. Not the details, those blur with time, but the feeling. The certainty that improvement was possible. That excellence could be taught without being shouted. That legends could be generous. Between drills, Nadal shared stories, not of trophies, but of training. Of mornings when motivation was thin and discipline carried the load. Of losses that taught more than wins ever could. He spoke of humility not as a buzzword, but as a survival skill. Tennis, he reminded her, is a long conversation with yourself. You must learn to listen even when you don't like what you hear. Alex thought of home. Of early practices, of long flights, of representing something larger than herself. The Philippines lived in her strokes, in the resilience she brought to every point, in the pride that steadied her hands. She felt the invisible thread connecting where she started to where she stood now, on clay that had shaped one of the greatest to ever play. The session ended the way it began, without ceremony. Nadal thanked her. She thanked him. The court returned to silence. But Alex didn't leave anything behind. She carried it all with her, the rhythm, the restraint, the reverence. Years passed. Tournaments stacked themselves into seasons. Wins came, losses too. The tour taught her its own lessons, how to recover, how to reset, how to keep faith when the scoreboard refused to cooperate. And through it all, that day remained untouched by time. It became a reference point, a compass. When pressure tightened her shoulders, she remembered how Nadal moved, loose, grounded, deliberate. When impatience tugged at her decisions, she recalled his insistence on margins. When doubt whispered, she returned to that nod. The silent approval that said, "You are on the right path." She realized something then, that, forever, moments aren't frozen. They move with you. They evolve. They reveal new meanings as you grow into them. What once felt like awe transformed into responsibility. If she had been given access to greatness, then she owed the sport her best effort in return.